Okay, thank you. I think everyone's pretty much here, aren't they? So, well, what a turnout. I'm glad I did it outside rather than try to squeeze you all inside. That would have been horrendous, wouldn't it? So, I hope you can see the screen okay. Obviously, you're here to see me, not the screen, but we'll give it a go. Okay. All right. For those who don't know, this is talk about the Trans Am Bike Non-Stop Checkpoint Edition. I want to go this way, do I? So I get into the, sorry, I need to be on the live stream apparently. Are we live stream? You can't see me. Is that the best place?
It's going to be in the way, John.
I'm going to be in the way, yeah. This is a race I did early in the summer. It started on the June 7th. And it goes from Oregon, Astoria in Oregon. Go this way. Sorry. Hello. Hello, everyone online. It goes from Astoria in Oregon to Yorktown in Virginia. So just a quick bit of history about the race and the routes. So the reason I did it was because this route was invented, or the original route was invented in 1976 on the 4th of July. So it's part of the bicentenary celebrations in America for 1976, 200 years after the Declaration of Independence. They decided, a group of cyclists decided to ride across the country, and they nicknamed it or called it the Bike Centenary. And they decided to finish in Yorktown because that was where the last battle of the War for Independence was won by the Americans and the French. So they all wanted to get there in time for the 4th of July back in 1976. So this route's been around for 50 years. And because I was born on the 4th of July, 1976, it felt like a good time to go and do it and celebrate America, I suppose. Obviously not the best administration at the moment, but there's still thousands and millions of lovely Americans over there. So it's a good place to go for that. And the other thing about the race is that it's, or at least the event, is that the Bike Centenary eventually became the Adventure Association, or the Adventure Cycling Association of America, which came up with loads of routes across America, including the Great Divide mountain bike route, which became the Tour Divide, which is the one I did 2 years ago. So it's really, without these guys back in 1976, these long distance routes across America would exist. And also, as people started racing it, this ultra cycling, ultra distance racing came out of that, really. So it's really the start of the history of all of that stuff. And it sort of culminated in a race. I think it started in about 2014, I think we started racing the Trans Am. So it's an unsupported race. There's another race across America that's not to be confused about, which is called the Race Across America, or RAM, which these guys here have done, which is the one that goes from, remind me?
Oceanside
to Annapolis, yeah, to Annapolis. So that's the classic one everyone's heard of, and it's the guys on their own with a camper van following them and stuff. You did on tandems, didn't you? Team of eight?
4 tandems.
4 tandems, yeah. Cool. So this race has sort of evolved over the last few years. So originally they followed the Trans Am route, which was the one that was sort of created in 1976, but it became a little bit dangerous. Some of the roads, obviously over 50 years, became busier. They became more dangerous. People were killed on the race and not on the race. So the organizer, the year, I think it was 2017, I think the sport lost about 3 people that year, including one of the biggest names of the sport, Mike Hall, at the time. So the organizer wanted to create a new race, which was safer and more off-road. So going across rail trails and off-road a bit more. So it's been a little bit confused, the race, over the last few years. So we've ended up with this sort of amalgamation of different races and different routes being squeezed into one. So it's a little bit confusing. So everyone starts in the same place, but there are two finish lines, which seems a bit stupid, and they're different distances and everything else. So I decided to finish in the traditional finish of Yorktown, but a lot of people decided to finish in DC. So this gives you an idea of, if you can see that, of the different finishes. So it's a checkpoint. There's one in Oregon, one in Wyoming, and then there's 5 bridges across the Mississippi, which is the one per checkpoint, and then 2 different finishes. So some of the guys who finished in DC probably did 800 kilometers less than me, maybe. So it's you couldn't really compare what everyone was doing. But it was really, I think, at the end of the day, it was just it was a collection of people riding fast across the country. It didn't need to be a race, really. It was just we didn't need to be graded in terms of how fast we were. But it was just it's just nice to be in a community doing it at the same time. So a little bit confusing. So two different finishes. So this gives you this picture gives you an idea of all the different routes across the states that people could do. So the blue one you can see is the traditional Trans Am, which is the one that was started in 1976. The red one is the new one he came up with, which was the US Bike Non-Stop, which follows a lot more rail trails and off-road things, like the Cowboy Trail and the Katy Trail and some other ones coming into DC. And then the yellow ones are all workarounds in certain places. So a lot of people were doing the most direct route, which is pretty much the red route until you got to Nebraska and then went straight across to DC. I ended up doing a sort of hybrid of the two. So this is my route going across. So I wanted to do the traditional start through Oregon down the coast. And then I had an option to go up to Mount Rushmore in the middle, which I didn't do at the end. And then I came down through Missouri and then picked up the old Trans Am from Illinois onwards. So I ended up doing, I think my route was going to be, the original route was going to be about 6,200 kilometers. And my plan was to try and do it in 20 days. That was the idea. So, I mean, not many, I think the original Trans Am route is about 6,800 or so. So it was a little bit less than that, a little less timing. And it was still, I think, a decent distance, I think, to try and cover. So can you see that a little bit? That's all the kit I took with me, including, well, maybe not the teddy bear, but it was there's a lot of kit that goes into this stuff, and normally it's all really well organized, but that's just so there's I could go through it if you want to talk about it later, but it's not very exciting. But there we are. That's all the stuff I took with me. So this is Astoria in Oregon, famous. Oh, sorry, I'm in your way. So this is Astoria in Oregon. I think it starts here because there's a monument here and there's a monument to the finish. So look, it makes it quite sort of, gives it some symmetry in a way. Astoria is famous for obviously the Goonies, which was filmed there, and Short Circuit, if anyone knows that. So some classic 80s films. But it's a great place. There's literally a brewery every 5 seconds in there. So it's it's a nice, cool, Oregon-y kind of place. So the race didn't start from the top here. I think everyone would have rebelled if we had to climb up to the top of the monument before the start. But I still went up there the day before to have a look around. This is me at the start. Sorry, which way do I need to go? Should I go over there somewhere? I'll go. Sorry. So there's me with a fully loaded bike at the beginning. So it was fairly easy to see. We started quite early, 6 in the morning. It was fairly chilly. But it was so that's my full setup. So I just give you a quick idea. So spare clothes in the back. This is sort of tools and electronics, and then food in the front. So pretty light setup. I didn't really have a sleep kit, but I had a sort of emergency sleep kit. So the idea was to sleep in hotels and motels most of the time. But I had a floatable mattress and a bivy bag and a pillow, I think. That's about it. What's up? I had a pillow, yeah, because Mum bought me a pillow, so I had to mention that. So I had a very nice pillow. Okay. So not and a silk lining. So not a lot to take with me. But that's sort of the plan was to stay in motels as much as I could. So that's it. So that was the start. These are the guys who sort of started with us. There's about 25 people. I mean, ranging in ages from maybe mid-20s. And the oldest person was 84. So no excuse on this table over here for next year. Yeah, Thomas 84. He's done it. I think he's done it 5-6 times. He's finished. I think his record was about 90 days or 94 days. He was incredible. I think he managed to get halfway through Oregon. That's where he got to in the end. But he can get on the bike without using the curb to be able to get high enough to get his leg over the bike. So I don't know how the hell he was going to do it, but yeah, he's a lovely chap. He had the champagne open to the stars, I think. So there's a picture. I don't know if you can see him in there. He's in there somewhere. So a real ragtag collection of people, as usual, in these events. And a very small event compared to some of the big ones like Transcontinental, where you get 400 people starting. This is a very small event. It's nice. We used to all met the night before and had a chat, and we knew we weren't going to see each other that often. But it was a nice crowd, mostly Americans, a few Canadians, and about I think it was 2 Brits, me and a Scottish guy, and a couple of Europeans, and one guy from Uruguay. So yeah, it's quite a mixed bunch. With quite all ducks in a way. So this was coming down the coast, the Oregon coast. So it's lovely. I think they go past that bit in the Goonies where the ship comes out at the end, which is quite cool. I think that might have been near there. But I wanted to go down the Oregon coast, see the Pacific and stuff. The other route went straight inland. So you started on the edge of an estuary, so not quite on the coast. So it's quite nice to sort of pop down the coast for a while. This was first night, so I had a bit of a mixed day. It was lovely coming down the coast, and then coming off the coast, it was horrible. Loads of trucks, massive trucks, everything in America. The vehicles are loud, they're smoky, they're horrible. I got coal rolled for the first time, which is when the diesel pickup goes past you. They don't have a modified engine, but they can blow black smoke out at you. So they love that over there. So that happened on day one, so at least got that out of the way early. So yeah, and anyway, I ended up in this place, and there was an Italian place across the road, and the Americans are really curious generally, and they sort of ask you what you're up to, and just sort of like talking about stuff. And this young waitress who served me, in my takeaway, she put this little note in, which I still have. So that was day one. So she said, "Good luck on your journey," and it was a real sign of things to come in terms of how generous and kind everyone was on the way through it. So it was just a nice little thing she didn't have to do, and she just popped it into my takeaway, and it just it's a nice thing to happen almost day one. This is day two, going up the Mackenzie River. I was struggling day two. I don't know why. I had a great first day, and then day two, it just sort of like you dawn on you that you're gonna have to get up and do this every single day, and I was struggling a little bit. So the weather wasn't great. It was starting to drizzle with rain and stuff. But then you get a few of these sort of covered bridges around, so especially in the north, which are quite cool as you go up things. So the plan was to go over Mackenzie Pass, which is a classic old climb in Oregon. And so I got halfway up it, and we were told that there may be some people working on the road, and we might have to stand back, and we might be able to convince them to let us through. But I got there was no way they're going to let me through. So I did this 15-kilometer climb, and I had to turn around and go down again, and then go up and over another climb. So it rather screwed up my day two. And then it just pissed down the rain for the next 4 hours, I think. So it was a pretty tricky day. So near the top, I needed to get dry, and I found this sort of area of shelter. This guy was working in this big covered garage area. And I said, "Oh, I'm looking for the office for this estate place." And he said, "Oh, it's down there." He said, "What do you need?" I said, "Oh, I just need to get out of the rain for a bit." He said, "Oh, you can stand here. That's fine." So he let me stand there. And then the next thing he was like, "Show some peanuts." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's very kind. Thank you." Gave me some peanuts. Next thing he wanders off into his workshops, comes out. This massive gas blower was like blowing hot air at me outside. So without being nice, it was really nice to sort of like, he saw this drizzled this cyclist looking a little bit miserable. And he just came out and, without being asked, just sort of pulled out all of these things for me, which was really cool. So I had a chance to sort of dry for a bit and change my clothes before the big descent. So yeah, that was really cool. Hello, what am I doing? Sorry, I'm in the way. You've not seen the picture yet? Sorry. Okay. Oh. Yes. So that was day two. Unfortunately, I didn't get as far as I wanted to. I wanted to get to CP1 on day two to help me get through Oregon on the combination, but I didn't manage it. So rather screwed up day three. This is sort of like the climb up onto into the interior of Oregon. So there's this sort of coastal mountains you have to climb up into to get into the middle of Oregon. And unfortunately, I didn't manage to get to CP1 on day two, but the CP2 on day three, and I was the first person to get there on my side of the route. I think there was only 4 of us doing it. So, you know, first out of 4, you still got to be first, haven't you? Out of 4 people. So that was me. So they were insistent I wrote it down on that side. So that was quite cool. So I had to take a photo of that. This is the sort of scenery we were getting. So it became much drier over the other side of the mountains. Became much more like the sort of west you think of in terms of the really dry, sort of arid, mountainous and pines and all that sort of stuff. And sort of big open skies and, you know, long roads. And most of the roads were like this. They were very wide and a big hard shoulder, so you almost use that as a cycle lane. And when there wasn't much traffic, it was actually really pleasant. And if there was traffic, it sort of was away from you. So it was pretty good riding actually through Oregon generally. This is coming down to Idaho, where it's much flatter before you hit the mountains, and there's sort of crazy amounts of irrigation, making everything lovely and green, which is a bit weird because it would naturally, I think it would be quite sort of dry, but they're so very clever in getting all this sort of irrigation around the place that it becomes quite green. And then I found myself on a gravel road I wasn't expecting. It wasn't on the map, and it was pretty loose and pretty horrible. And I was on, as you can see, the tires I'm on 35mm tires. So riding gravel, loose gravel on 35mm tires, fully laden, is not much fun. But it was beautiful. It was great, but it was like, oh God, I hope this doesn't go on for too long, because it just slows your progress down so much. So this is still, I think it was Idaho still. And then going through some valleys. This is day 5, I think, this picture. I was having another disastrous day. Felt awful. Everything felt bad. Having had a good day the day before, I really struggled this day. And yeah, it's just a long climb. I think the climb went on for about 60, 70 kilometers. It was sort of up and down, but it was just gradually going up the whole time. So you just felt like you were just grinding your way through the ride. And it takes me a while to get, you know, to give you an idea. It takes me about a week to get into some of these long rides in terms of my body getting used to it, in terms of feeling comfortable on the bike, in terms of things sort of settling down a bit. So it's sort of, I get used to these days where I don't feel great. And you just sort of try and push on if you can. But it was pretty miserable day in terms of my mood, but a beautiful place to be, which is right. This is sort of up the top in Idaho. So starting into the Rockies now a bit more. And you see the snow up the top there. And it's nice. So it felt like you're in sort of cowboy territory almost at that point. So that was really nice. And that's the first time since the beginning, I saw another competitor, a chap called Rob, who was a retired New York copper policeman. He was there during 9/11 and everything else, lived on Long Island. And he had this amazing sort of mental ability to just keep going, not particularly fast, but he never really stopped. And so I rode with him for a bit. He helped me sort of find my mojo a bit more again that evening, going up through these lovely canyons and stuff. And we just rode together for 2-3 hours and chatted away, and it was, you know, all my problems seemed to go away. So it sort of really helps at that point of the trip. And he'd never been over to the West Coast, so, you know, American, lived over in Long Island, New York all his life, never been over to Idaho. So he was just blown away by the scenery and stuff, which is pretty incredible. Over there, massive wide open spaces, big sort of grasslands and stuff. And this is coming into Wyoming, sort of nice little. So you sometimes ended up on little bike paths and stuff. But it's just, yeah, the West is just lovely. And then we get into that's the Grand Tetons. So it's quite a famous sort of area. So that's lovely. So I sort of came in on one side from Idaho into the Grand Tetons and see them from that side. Then I went over the Teton Pass, which is a pretty tough climb. I think it's 10% of the top for about 4 kilometers, which is pretty tough. And it's a busy road. It's not particularly high. It's going to be around about 2,500 meters, maybe, about that. It's not the highest pass. The highest pass I did was Togetee, which is I'll come up to in a second. So it's really lovely. So there's a bit of a headwind that day, and that's when my bike started making a bit of a noise. But you can still see how beautiful the classic sort of rocky sort of mountains were like. And I managed to see some bison, which is pretty cool. So I think they're probably farm bison. I'm not sure if they're farmed or not, but I hadn't seen bison before, so that's pretty cool to see that going through there. And then Moran Junction, that was CP2, checkpoint 2. And I think at that point I was the fourth person there to checkpoint 2 out of the whole race. So I was doing pretty well. I managed to get a bit ahead of people by my route choice, going south of the Teessons rather than going north. It did cost me a lot of money. I ended up in this really fancy resort. I think I had a really crappy little full bunk room. It cost me, I think, 250 quid for one night to stay there. But at that point, I couldn't really sleep out. It was probably 0 degrees. It was freezing overnight, so I didn't have the kit to sleep out in that kind of condition. So I had to basically chuck the money at it and hope for the best. I had to really carefully sort of design my the race to avoid having to do that. But as you know, I mean, day 2 it went out the window, so I just had to do what I did. So it was expensive. Sort of trip through there, but I was doing quite well. 4th place, I was going, yeah, it's cool. And everyone was quite far behind at that point. There were 3 guys way ahead of me, but I was thinking I was feeling pretty good. And then I went over the Continental Divide. So that's probably the highest point I got to on the whole trip. So that's about just over 3,000 meters, I think. So the thing about this is where I had to go over this climb on the Tour Divide, and this is where I had my slight heart murmur and almost fainted. So there was a little bit of apprehension going up this climb, having been up there before. And unfortunately, this time was all right. And the nice thing was there's a lovely tailwind pushing me all the way up. It was lovely. I met some other guys coming the other way on the Trans Am, the opposite direction, because there are quite a few people touring it in the opposite direction at that point because of the 50-year anniversary. So I thought, this is great. Got a tailwind all the way up. I'm going to go miles the other side. And of course, as soon as I got to the other side, there's me, top of the pass. And as soon as I got to the other side, a massive headwind. So having had a tailwind all the way up, I had a headwind, and it was one of those headwinds when you're going down probably about 6% downhill, and you're having to cycle hard into that headwind. So it was pretty bad, and it was getting worse as the day went on. So I ended up stopping early that day because I couldn't handle anymore. But then, again, there's this thing when you meet Americans, So I stopped in this place called Du Bois, and the Cowboy Cafe, and there's this group of that all sort of clubbed together, coming in the opposite direction of Trans Am bikers. And I was sitting in this restaurant by myself in this cafe by myself. They said, "Oh, come over, come to us, come talk to us." And they're just like, they want to ask you questions about what you're doing, how's it going, and all that sort of stuff. And of course, we're all bikers, but they were sort of quite interested in how fast I was going, how far I was going, all those sort of things. And one of the guys said, "Oh, if where are you from?" "Oh, he's from Vermont." And I said, "Oh, I'm going to New England afterwards." And he said, "Oh, come and visit me afterwards." So, which I did. So it was lovely. I mean, just literally, they make you feel included. They want to include you all the time. I think that just makes the race really lovely in that sense that people are just sort of interested in what you're doing. So that was actually quite a cool day. So I finished really early that day, and he managed, I think about 160 kilometers. I was planning on doing 300 most days. And this is when my bike started to get really bad in terms of the clicking noise. So I was fiddling around with, I was convinced it was the bottom bracket, and it was like clicking away, and it was getting worse and worse. So I had a little bit of a play with it at the Cowboy Cafe. And part of the great thing about meeting these guys was they said, "Oh, you must go to this bike shop down the road, slightly off route, but they're really good in there." So I ended up in this bike shop the next day, and this is Ed, who works on my bike, meticulously going through everything to see what it was. We eventually took it apart. We found that the drive side bearing on the bottom bracket was really rough and horrible. So he changed it out, managed to change it out, and I lost about 3 hours in the race. And a little bit of extra time to get back onto the route. But he sorted that. And of course, as these things happen, 10 minutes after I left the shop, the clicking started again, which is great. I couldn't be bothered to turn back. So I thought, oh, well, it can't be that bad. I'll carry on. It was just maybe it'll wear in something, I'm not sure. So this is sort of starting my woes with the bike as I went across America. So these are the kinds of roads you end up in. This was end of Wyoming coming into Nebraska. So once it got much more exposed and away from the Grand Tetons into the prairies and into the slightly more flat areas of America, I was getting massive side winds, really horrible side winds, and gusting quite badly as well. And the thing about this little road was, so you can see the rumble strip here. and then it's not particularly wide at this point here. So you had to make a choice about whether you rode on a tiny bit, it's probably about 2 feet wide, on that sort of bit on the other side of the rumble strip or in the road. But you've got these trucks coming past, these massive lorries coming past you, sort of sneaking on the road because the gusts are pushing them up around as well. So it was quite nasty. So you were sort of, I think I was quite glad to get through this section because I ended up riding on the 2 feet little channel there. But with gusting side winds, it wasn't much fun. I think I was with Rob for a bit that morning, and he ended up riding on the road, I think. So yeah, but he was a bit more reckless than me, I think. But it's quite tricky that section in terms of traffic and stuff. But this you can see that's where we started getting these trains. So in the Midwest, you have these amazing long freight trains. They're literally, I remember coming down into this valley once, and I could see one end of the valley, see the train, and the other side of the valley. The whole valley was, I can't think how, they must be miles long, these things, extraordinary. And this is probably the Wild West now. That's sort of a classic sort of Wild West thing. This is actually just a model by the side of the road. That's but it's it gives you an idea of the kind of stuff we're going. So I was coming down off the Rockies, off the plateau, and then coming down into Nebraska. So the Rockies are interesting. I mean, if you think of mountains being a bit like the Alps, so you get to the Alps and see them, they're big, great big things. But the Rockies very much are. It just goes up and up and up and up and up, and it goes over a very long period of time. It goes up and up and up, and then you get to like the Grand Tetons, and it goes down again. So you don't really feel like you're getting into the mountains. And when you're coming out of the mountains, you don't really feel it either. So this day, I was coming out of Wyoming, had a bit of a tailwind. I managed to cover, I think it's my biggest day. I managed to cover 385 kilometers, and with a slight downhill and the tailwind, I was averaging 30 kilometers an hour for that 385 kilometers. So it was quite a good day in terms of covering ground, and also I had the mental capacity in the day to wash all my kit, so that was pretty good. So I had a really good day that day, I think. And then of course, when I have a good day, I have a crap day afterwards. So this is sort of like stuff we see in Nebraska. So it's only going into flatlands. One of the interesting things is the Rockies is very, very dry. So you don't really realize it until you start dropping down into Nebraska and places like that, where you start smelling the humidity in the air a bit more. It's still quite arid, but it's suddenly you start smelling the rain and the moisture in the air. So Nebraska is just full of these great big silos everywhere, and you're on these long straight roads that go on forever. You still get there and go, okay, look, there's a town coming out. It's about 10 miles away. It's fine. Whenever you see this big thing, I'll be there soon. And then 45 minutes later, you're still looking at the same silo, going, am I ever going to get there? And it gets quite hard. I mean, Nebraska mentally was probably the toughest part of the race, I think. These long straight roads, busy, noisy, nothing really to look at, very flat, sometimes a bit of a headwind. So I ended up getting too much into my head on some of those days and finding everything hurting. You just feel like everything hurts in those days because there's nothing to distract you. There's nothing really. I mean, I was listening to a bit of music or to a podcast, but because the external environment you're in is not very interesting, it means that you end up thinking about things internally too much in terms of how your body feels. And I was struggling with my neck at that point, and my arse, to be fair, issues with that, and my feet, everything just seemed to hurt. And then towards the end of Nebraska, I got coming into Lincoln, started getting some hills again, and suddenly that all went away. You've got some hills, you've got some interest, there's some more interesting things to look at, and you realize that a lot of the enjoyment of cycling is in terms of, it's not just turning the cranks and going forward. It's, you need variety, you need hills, you need corners and everything else. And then suddenly you go, actually, I quite like cycling again, having hated it for the last 3 days. So it's quite hard mentally to get through that. I think that place there was called Jocelyn, and that was all there was there. That was the village of Jocelyn. Was just a great big silo, and I saw that sort of became my halfway point. So it's about halfway in my head. This is about halfway. So that gives you an idea of that. So again, lovely, sort of beautiful you know, I mean, it had its own charm in a way. I suppose if you like silos and green fields and fatness, you know, it's not for everyone. But yeah, I was quite glad to get out of Nebraska, I must admit. So getting to Missouri, I did a little bit of Iowa before I got into Missouri. And Missouri is basically, it's just endless hills. And just one story before I got out of Nebraska, I was taking some photos of the Goonies houses and in Astoria. And as you do, you get chatting to the Americans that happen to be there. And they said, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you up to?" And I said, "Oh, I'm doing this." And I said, "Are you going to go to Lincoln, Nebraska?" And I went, "Yeah, I think so." And they said, "Oh, that's where we're from. We're doing a big tour around in our big camper van. We might be there when you come through. Let us know." So we connected on Instagram. And they came out to see me in Lincoln, which is lovely. And they took me to the Runzers, I think, which is like the classic Nebraskan fast food joint where they do cabbage sandwiches. Yeah. Which was actually quite nice, but they were really nice. They wanted to give me stuff and come and stay with us and all the rest of it. It was nice to sort of, I couldn't really say no to them. And so we spent about an hour or so eating cabbage and chatting about stuff. But it was cool. It was cool to connect with the locals again, you know. So this is Missouri. Missouri's probably when my woes started happening massively with the bike. So I was having this clicking sound was getting worse and worse and worse. I was like, oh God, it's not good. There's one point where I was convinced I had a puncture on the back wheel because I kept getting sprayed with stuff. My back and my legs, which is often the telltale sign that you've got an issue with your. So I was running tubeless. So when there's a puncture that doesn't seal, you often get sealant that hits the back of your legs. I kept on looking at it, couldn't find any problems, and then eventually I realised I put soda water in my water bottle. Every time I hit a button, it was then spraying water in the back of my legs. So fortunately, it wasn't too bad. But Missouri is starting to get really hot. I mean, probably in the late 30s most of the time. And Missouri is literally just lumpy. It's just like it's like corrugated. The land someone's just pushed it together and created these corrugations. You can sit on top of a lump, you can see the next lump, probably about 4 lumps going in ahead. And it seems to be the same in every single direction. And they have a lot of imagination about how they name their roads there as well. So it's basically a number or a letter. And it's almost like a grid format. So great for battleships if you want to play battleships in Missouri. But it was literally, you're on J, and then you're on K, and then you're on 1, and then you're on 2, and then you're on. So and there's nothing really there. The old farm, the old village. So you just felt like you really were in the middle of nowhere. And this is when I had the big mechanical. So this has a bit more of, hopefully gives you some idea of how it works. It literally, there's just folds in the road. It just kept on going and going. And this is where I had my big mechanical. So the clicking was getting worse. I felt a bit of play going on in my bottom bracket area. I was looking down at my crank, and I could see that it wasn't my chainring wasn't turning around on its axis. It seemed to be wobbling a bit. So well, that's not good. And then my crank started hitting my front neck and the outside gear, and the big ring on the front back. And I went, oh, this isn't good. So I sort of turned around, decided to head for St. Joseph, which is quite a big town in Missouri. So it was taking me about 50 kilometers off route. So I thought I have to go and get it fixed. There's obviously something not right. And I think I was just climbing up a hill and just went like this. And my whole crank came off on my right side. And I was in the middle of nowhere, really in the middle of nowhere. As I said to someone, bumfuck nowhere. It really was. There was nothing there at all. So I took the chain off, and then I strapped the crank to the back of my bike, and I started walking towards King City, which sounds quite an exciting place, but it's not that exciting, to be fair. And just stuck out my thumb every time the pickup went past. So I was walking up the hills and then freewheeling down, walking up the hills, freewheeling down. And I think I was probably about 10 miles away from King City. But within about 15 minutes, someone picked me up in their pickup truck. Took me slightly out of his way to King City. So this is the chap who picked me up, lovely chap. They took me to Casey's, which is in the whole of the Midwest, there's loads of these cases, which is where everything happens in these places. It's a gas station with a sort of supermarket attached to it, and a pizza. They do pizza and stuff like that. So if I got to Casey's, then I would be all right. Someone would pick me up and take me to St. Joseph, because obviously there's no taxis, there's no buses, there's nothing to take you anywhere. So you just have to rely on, hopefully, someone might be able to give you a lift. So I was hoping, so I had this really crap sign that said St. Joseph sitting outside this thing. So I went and asked them, what can I do? What can I do? Now I'm stuck. I need to get to St. Joseph. And they said, oh, why don't you ring the sheriff? The sheriff will take you. It's like, okay, that sounds really weird. Okay, we'll try that. And I tried and I couldn't get through. She said, oh, let me try someone. So they said, oh yeah, he can pick you up, but he can only take you to the county line. I said, oh, where's that? He said, oh, it's 2 miles that way. I was like, well, that's not really much help. So, so one of the luckiest things that happened to me that day was the freezers are broken in that Casey's. So they're chucking away tons and tons of ice cream and stuff they had frozen out. And one of the women who worked there, she had called her husband to come down and pick up loads of ice cream to take home, put in his freezer. And when he came down, she managed to persuade him to take me to St. Joseph. She came out and said, you have got money, you have got gas money. I said, yeah, fine. I mean, I'm not homeless, I've just got a broken bike. And so he very kindly took me to St. Joseph. So I took the bike in the back. But before we could go to St. Joseph, he had to go home to turn off the grill because he was grilling some pork and put his half-frozen ice cream in his freezer. And so we ended up going half an hour in the wrong direction first. So it was fine. But he had these 2 kids in the back as well. It was all a bit crazy. So he got to his house. I think it was a house. It was down a gravel road. And I've never seen so much rubbish and crap and awful. There were about 40 dogs, maybe that's too many, maybe 20 dogs there, and cats and chickens and God knows what else, and just rubbish everywhere. And all the stuff that comes with animals everywhere as well, as you can imagine. So very carefully sort of picking my way through, helping him take the ice cream into his house, walked into his house, and it wasn't much better. And it was just like, it was a car crash in his house, basically. He was a nice guy. Funny enough, he was just completely chaotic lifestyle. Anyway, so before we could go to town, he said, I've got to go and get my gun. I was like, okay. He said, it's not for you. I never go to town without my gun. I was like, going, okay. This is a bit crazy. So he had his gun with him. He had his 2 kids in the back. There were no dogs, fortunately. They didn't come with us. Yeah, so this poor kid's been in this, and they hadn't been let out. They'd just been in this car for ages. So we were driving along, and the youngest girl, who was about 2, probably, she said, I need to go to the loo. She was like to him. And he went, oh, we can't do that now. We've passed that place. You're just going to have to hold on to it. So I obviously don't have children, but I can't imagine telling a 2-year-old to hold on to a poo is going to work, really. So, of course, it started smelling a little bit in the car as we got to St. Joseph. But it was, it was interesting. I gave him $60 to say thank you, and he seemed very happy. And he was so mad that he gave me a cream soda or something in the car, I think. But yeah, he dropped me off at this hotel. He said, oh, you don't want to stay there, you don't want to stay there, you want to stay at this place. So, I mean, amazing. Again, these guys had nothing particularly, and they still were happy to help and take me to this place. So it was amazing. You know, I'm not sure how I would have got there otherwise. So I was very, very lucky that someone could take me, because it was about 8 o'clock in the evening when this was happening. So it was dark by the time I got to St. Joseph. So I was incredibly lucky. And then when I was unloading the bike, this other family there said, started chatting, what's going on, what's happening? And I said, Spencer. They said, oh, we'll take you to the bike shop in the morning. So I sat down to breakfast, saw them breakfast, said, oh, you know, chuck it in the back, you know, we'll take you down to the bike shop. So that was cool. So again, without being asked, they just sort of helped me and took me down to the first bike shop. The first bike shop couldn't help. But by this point, my knight in shining armor had turned up. So Nick, who's here tonight, Nick Branham, wave your hand. There he is. His best mate from school in New Zealand. You grew up in North Island, New Zealand. His best mate from school, he hasn't seen for 20 years. Is that about right? Steve, he lives in St. Joseph. Nick got hold of it. I sort of put out an SOS on all my sort of channels. I said, look, I'm stuck in St. Mary's. He got hold of, I was stuck in St. Joseph. He got hold of Steve. Steve, who doesn't really work much. He's not really a house husband. What do we call him? Stay-at-home dad? Yeah. He was free. He picked me up. And so Nick, you haven't seen him for 20 years, although you have a good relationship, don't you? felt he could ring this guy up. And this Steve just turned up and like, he became my personal chauffeur for a couple of days. So it was amazing. So I had so much luck. So he took me to the other bike shop. They couldn't help either. Unfortunately, we talked about, you know, taking parts off other bikes and stuff. And I think the best solution we came up with was maybe I could find a crankset on Amazon. And that's going to take 3 or 4 days to arrive. And it's going to be like $600 or something. So I go, well, you know, what do I do otherwise? So I was going to be potentially stuck in St. Joseph for a while. And the thing is, you know, the cranksets, they have different lengths of cranks, they have different widths, they have different brands, all the rest of it. So bike shops don't tend to carry a whole selection of cranks because they just get them in for specific jobs, or they come with a bike that they're buying for clients. I think Linda said at that point, just ring a few bike shops in Kansas City, which was about an hour down the road. So I looked up and went and found the best looking sort of road bike shop I could find. I thought it was called Elite Cycling, I think, something like that. And I gave them a ring and said, oh, hi, you know, I'm doing the Trans Am and I've broken this crank. You don't happen to have any non-drive side tram cranks, do you? And they went, oh, yeah, we've got loads of those. And I was like, what? And so they said, yeah, everyone comes in, because it's like really high end, everyone comes in and replaces them for power meters. So they're there, you know, they can't be bothered to take their cranks away, so they're just leaving them with us. So we've got loads lying around. What size are you? What's, you know, and I said, oh, 172.5. Oh, yeah, got one of those. So within an hour, I was down in Kansas City, and they were fitting a new crank, non-drive side crank, to my bike. And it was like, oh, this is amazing. And new tires and everything else. It was all good, and it's all perfect. And they did it within about 15 minutes, sorted the whole thing out. And Steve, I had to take Steve via brewing, obviously, to get him some beer. So thank you. Yeah, so he was happy as well. And he dropped me back onto the course exactly where I'd stopped the day before. Oh no, the day before. And sent me off. And I was like, bye, thanks very much. So this is the bike shop that sorted me out. You know, they're doing their bits. New tire, all done really quickly. And this is Steve saying goodbye, hopefully for the last time. And anyway, so this was day 13, I think, at this point. So I'd been off the road for about 20 hours, and I was back to where I was with this broken crank set. I was back to where I was within 20 hours, which was pretty incredible, given I was in the middle of nowhere. And Steve kindly took me back onto the course. So started cycling, going, oh, like the crank's still hitting the front neck. That's not very good. So I sort of adjusted a bit, sort of, you know, bent a couple of bits and thought I would be all right. And I realized there was a huge amount of play on the crank. And in their rush, the bike shop had forgot to put any spaces on the drive side. So there was a huge amount of play, and I couldn't take the play out with the preload adjuster. So after about 18 kilometers, I gave up and texted Steve and said, can you come and pick me up, please? And so Steve, having just got home, I think, he came, turned around and came back, and I think he cooked some sausages. I think he managed that and maybe had a beer. He came back, picked me up from King City, of course, or near King City. He took me home, put me up for the night, gave me some dinner, and was just incredibly kind and thoughtful. And it was nothing was too much bother. They just, they included me in the family. It was just nice to be in a family situation for a while. It's weird, you know, in those sort of points, you're not really stressed because you can't really do anything about it. You just sort of accept it for what it is. And I was so lucky to have someone like Steve who could just look after me. And so we went back to another bike shop in the morning. This was the second bike shop, and he stuck some spaces in, and I was good to go again. So I got back on the road the next day by about 11. Thanks to Steve. And so it's great. It's going like, oh, this is perfect. The bike's perfect. This is all great, lovely. 20 minutes later, clicking again. Massive clicking. It's like going, oh God. So I was thinking, oh, bugger it. I'm just going to go. It's just going to carry on. If a bike breaks again, it breaks again. I can't really go back now. I'm just going to carry on and hopefully pray for the best. So yeah, clicking pretty much stay with me for the rest of the ride. I thought, well, if the crank's going to break, I've got, you know, if I probably got, it'll be fine. 3,000 kilometers to go, that'll be fine. It'll be all right. So that clicking stay with me for the rest of the race. That's me in one of my last cases. I love cases, so I think I probably went to about 3 or 4 a day. So I have a picture of the cases. So this, I ended up then going down. This is down to the Missouri River. This is the Katy Trail. So it's an old. So part of the second route that the guy came up with was this big rail trail that goes along the Missouri River between. I think it was a railway that connected St. Louis with Kansas City, and it's now a dedicated bike trail. And it would have been great if it hadn't rained. So it just made everything. It was like a sort of compacted sort of gravel trail. So it was, if it was dry, it'd been really firm, but because it was wet, just a little bit of give in the surface meant I was pretty much going along at about 21, 22k an hour, which was really frustrating. And there was a road next to it. I went onto the road and I could ride at about 30k an hour with the tailwind. This was amazing. But then the traffic made you very aware that they didn't want you there, considering there was a rail trail right next to it. So I ended up back on the rail trail thinking, well, I can't really be in GC anymore, which is general classification, because I've had too much outside help. So I might as well stay on the rail trail and enjoy that if I can. But it's a bit like, if anyone's done the Flitch Way here, it's a bit like the Flitch Way, but for 270 kilometers. So gives you an idea. It got a little bit tedious, I must admit. It was nice to be away from the traffic, but it just got a little bit tedious after a while. But you know, the odd bridge here and there is what made it a bit more exciting. The odd station there, so that was quite nice. And you know, it wasn't too bad a day. But I had my phone had got very wet that day, which is a bit of a pain. I couldn't charge it. So that night, I could get a little bit of charge occasionally. And I used in the gas station. I asked if I could borrow someone's phone just to see where I was aiming for a hotel. I thought it was just off the route where I was, and I'd see it. And I was at night going. This is when I crossed the Mississippi near St. Louis, and I couldn't find this bloody hotel, and I couldn't charge my phone enough to actually be able to find it on my phone. So I got to about 11:30 midnight, and I thought I'm gonna have to sleep out. So this is where I slept. Side of the road. Everything was a bit wet. So it was sort of quite near a busy road, and it was lit, but it was fine. There wasn't really anything around me. There was no residential, so I didn't feel that sort of stressing. It was just a bit windy, unfortunately. But I still slept there for 6-7 hours. I suppose 6 hours. I think that's the morning after I tried to sort of pack everything up. So there's St. Louis. That's about as close as I got to St. Louis with the famous arch. And this is part of my own route. So there's a sort of connection between the US bike non-stop section and going down towards the Trans Am towards Chester, which is where Popeye was from. Chester, Illinois. So it's down getting some nice light. This is I think this is Illinois, going down towards the Ohio River, and I ended up staying in this amazing hotel in the just off the Ohio River, and I was really lucky. It was one of those. So it was the day after I had to sleep out. I was knackered in the evening. I was really falling off a cliff because I needed good sleep to be able to perform each day, and because I didn't have great sleep the night before, I really struggled in the evening. And I got to this place, which I could try and remember if I can. It's Maryville, Illinois. It's a little place. It's quite nice on the Ohio River, and there's this hotel I've been trying to book all day, and it didn't work online. I tried the number, no one would answer. And I went to the gas station. It was dark by this point. I said, "Do you know if there's anywhere to stay on?" She went, "Oh yeah, there's a hotel. There's a couple of Airbnbs." And within sort of 5 minutes, she rang someone. They'd rung me back. I sorted out the hotel. She then said, "You know, you look really hungry. Have some pizza." So she had a pizza for her fiance, and she gave me half his pizza. He won't want half. He won't want all of that. So she gave me that. She said, "Oh, you can have that for free because we're going to check that out anyway." And she just wanted to make sure I had some food. And again, it's just amazing that, you know, they just, you know, I said, "Oh, is there anything?" You know, she said, just pay it forward. That's just the American way. They just want to help people, and they want to know that someone would help them in the same situation. And because the Midwest is so sort of remote, I think it's sort of ingrained in their culture in a way that they want to help people because they might be in the same situation themselves at some point. So I ended up in this beautiful hotel. Apparently it was haunted. It may not. It was one of those sort of places when you walk into the room, it smells like staying at your grandmother's house, that kind of smell. You know, old-fashioned smell that you only really associate with your older generations. But it was amazing to be able to, being able to stay there. And this is crossing the Ohio. It's a little ferry, which is free, amazingly. You go across it free. And because it's free, within about 3 to 4 days after I crossed it, maybe a week after I crossed it, they ran out of funding and had to stop it. So I was quite lucky to get across at that point. And I was into Kentucky. Kentucky was hot again. This is me. Is that still working? This is me. I'm trying to cool off in the beer store in a petrol station. So most of the gas stations, they have all the usual stuff, but they also have massive amounts of booze in there as well. And so much so that you can actually go and stand in a room that's 5 degrees to try and sort of cool down a bit with all the beer. So that was pretty cool to be able to do that. You can see how happy I was. So I think that's a happy expression, is it? But it was pretty warm at that point. But Kentucky was really cool. It means as you've got further east, there were more roads. The roads were narrower. There was more like what we're used to here. There was less traffic. More dogs that were quite inquisitive. When I say inquisitive, they're basically chasing you, trying to kill you. Kentucky suddenly felt more like riding I was used to. It was varied. It was up and down. It was more interesting than anything I'd been up to at that point. So my spirits are sort of raised a bit going through Kentucky. And then you started coming across a lot more trail followers and trail angels, they call themselves. So these poor people, they stayed out to sort of wave at me, and I didn't know who they were. I thought they couldn't possibly be there for me, so I just sort of waved and sort of carried on rather than stopping and saying hi. These poor children, I just ignored them. It was quite early on in the morning, and I eventually I felt so guilty. I managed to connect with them on Facebook, and they sent me this picture of this sign they'd made for me. And I think at the bottom it says, you can do it, TABNS 2026, and it says at the bottom, Joss Ridley, and these kids there with their pom-poms and stuff. And I felt so bad about not stopping and saying hi. But yeah, so in Kentucky, you start hitting these followers who will be on the side of the road. This was taken by one of those guys as I was coming up a hill, again looking really happy about life. And it was a beautiful climb, actually. It was really lovely, but again, it's really hot, and I was still getting this massive clicking noise. So the guy at the top, there were 2 guys, and one of the guys was like a big sort of bike guy. So he said, "Oh, you come back to my workshop. It's just off the route." Well, just off the route in America, it's about 45 minutes away in a car. So he took me right to his workshop and see how many bikes he had. So I thought he was going to fix it for me, but I ended up having to try and fix it myself. So I was able to take the bottom bracket apart and have a look at it and see what's going on, where the spaces were too many spaces, or how it failed and stuff. I couldn't find anything wrong with it. And I thought, maybe I just greased it up a bit, maybe the clicking was stock. Put it back together again. And of course, the clicking was still there. So it was going to be with me to the end of the race. But it was really nice. I mean, so this guy was the one who took the photo. It was just again, this is part of the sort of American experience when you're doing these long races. These guys are just so invested in what you're doing. They want to come out and celebrate it with you, and help you where they can. This is me then getting into East Kentucky. That was my breakfast one day. Lovely bit of drip coffee, and then it's biscuits and gravy for anyone who doesn't know what biscuits and gravy is, which is like it's almost like a sort of savoury scone kind of thing with sort of like white sauce on it. Pretty stodgy stuff. This is where I started becoming a sex symbol in America. In East Kentucky it was obviously my area. Women of a certain age would come up to me and go, "Oh my God, I love your accent." And this, and hi. Yeah, they go, "Oh yeah, where are you from?" "Oh yeah, I'm from England." They go, "Oh, amazing, that's so cool." It's like that happened to me about 4 times up there. And they were quite excited. I've never had biscuits and gravy before, so they were like swinging over me and sort of looking after me. So it was quite fun. So suddenly become a sex symbol for at least a day in East Kentucky. It's I might move there. I'm not sure. But actually, so East Kentucky is when you start getting into the Appalachians, and it's really, really beautiful. And it's very tough climbing down all day and through the forest and stuff. The interesting thing is, it's a little bit like the Ardennes in a way, but just on a slightly bigger scale. And because there's no real farmland there, there's no big city near there. There's a huge amount of poverty in East Kentucky. I think Kentucky is the 2nd poorest state in America, or 3rd. So amazing going through these areas, almost like shanty towns. So there'll be converted Winnebagos or or little sort of shacks to the side of the road with people living, and some ferocious dogs, some really horrible dogs. Well, thankfully, most of them were chained up, so I was okay. But it's quite, we weren't quite sure whether they're going to be chained up or not when you went past them. And you sort of ride past and you hear this dog, and you hear them running towards you. And then suddenly, like it's like a chain would sort of stop them from coming and taking you out. So I was quite lucky in a way, but it was incredible. And also, it seemed to be like where every single car in Kentucky went to die. So you know the roads would be lined with these sort of burnt out cars and cars of different kinds of repair. So these are some of the nicest dogs I met. Very inquisitive. They wanted to just go with you and bark at you and stuff, but these weren't too bad. There were some nasty ones as well. This sort of views we were getting up at the top of the mountains and stuff. So amazing. You can see this was pretty much what it was like. So the land has no real value in America because you can't farm it. There's nothing really there. So it's just full of hillbillies, basically, for want of a better word. But just stunning surroundings. So the crazy thing is, if this was in Europe near sort of like a nice town, this would be, prime real estate. But in America, it's just people in the woods, with all those sort of hillbillies sort of movies you think about. But really stunning. So I've actually got into Virginia. So that was actually, I forgot this bit. I wasn't going to say, but someone got in touch with me and wanted to do an interview with me for the local newspaper or online thing in Kentucky. So before I knew it, I was being photographed and having an interview there. I made it into some sort of paper or something, I think. So that was pretty fun. Yeah, so I think it was like I have to see if I can find the news report and maybe I'll play it later. So Virginia's quite similar to Kentucky. I got to the sign, I thought it says Virginia is for lovers. When I first saw it, I thought it said Virginia is for losers. I thought someone would put up a prank sign for it, but it's yeah, Virginia is for lovers. Yeah, there's a great little hotel I stayed at there. So this is sort of Virginia kind of scenery. It was hilly again, not quite as pretty as the Appalachians, but it was sort of farmland and hilly, and it was starting to get a bit busier with cars and stuff. There's more people living in Virginia. This sort of kind of place, and it was actually getting much more rural in some ways in terms of the small roads. This is actually after one of the big events I had. This was second last day. Well, I just started that. I think I'd been on the road for maybe an hour or two, and it's when I got clattered by a pickup from behind. So I was just riding along this road. It's quite a straight road. It's a suburban road, houses both sides. And before I knew it, this car was right on top of me and smacked me from behind. So it hit me with their wing mirror on the back of my shoulder, and quite hard. I didn't go down, fortunately, but I felt myself sort of scrape along the side of the vehicle. Just remember this: the pickups in America are huge. So like the bonnet, height of the bonnet is sort of around about head height, and then you can imagine this great big. These vehicles are enormous, and so the lady who was driving, she stopped. So looked, I was sort of like going, I didn't go down, fortunately, and I sort of stopped to say hello. And she said, "Oh my God, you're right, this." And I said, "Yeah." And so, so I was quite blunt with her. I might have used a few swear words and said, "You fucking hit me," something like that, I think. And I said, "Oh no, I can't believe you didn't go down," and this sort of stuff. And I was like, "Yeah, thank God I didn't go down. Oh, I saw you right at the last minute. I swerved to miss you." I was like, I don't remember much swerving going on. It was basically just got clattered from behind. So I think after she sort of established I was all right and I wasn't going to die in front of her, she said to me, "Oh, it looks like I've got the worst of it then," because her wing mirror was completely smashed up. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I said, "You do realize you just hit another human being with your car? I'm an actual person standing in front of you. You've hit me." She goes, "Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. I give you a hug if you weren't so sweaty, and I knew you were going to." Yeah, that would make it all better. Yeah, absolutely. And she was like, everything was an excuse. It was like, "Oh, I didn't see you, and it's a really difficult road. It's just over a rise, and it's really hard this road, and there's lots of people coming out." And I'm like going, I normally drive so slowly, and I was like, "Okay, right, cool, thanks for that." Yeah. And then she said, "Well, and I got driving now with a broken wing mirror, so you probably weren't using it, were you? So, not the end of the world." But yeah, it's just really weird. And then she said, "Well, have a fantastic day," and then sort of drove off. And it's like, so this is in my head for the next while. So I had to then, I think I eventually got some signal and rang Linda, I think. tried to ring Mum, she didn't answer. Yeah, so I tried with Linda, then she didn't answer, then Mum, then she didn't answer, I tried Linda again. And so we had actually, normally on these races, I don't ring Linda very often, apart from when I get hit by cars or stuff. So fortunately, on this one, I've been ringing her every day. She says, "Oh, hi, how you doing? So how's the day?" And I was like, "Just been hit by a car." "Oh, okay, yeah, great." You know, and, that sounds great. You know, it was no relation. I have to like talk to someone about it, and it's happened to me on a couple of other races where I got hit, and yeah, or nearly hit, and it's quite hard to process it, and it sort of slightly not ruined the end of the race, but it certainly was in my head a lot that day and the next day, and every time a car came anywhere near me, you know, it just felt that sort of tense up a little bit, not knowing if they're going to hit you or not. So I didn't have a mirror on my bike, so I can't see how close people are coming to me. And then I got sort of stressed, and my neck went again because I kept looking over my shoulder to see if anything was coming, and you know, it was quite a difficult sort of last couple of days. I was struggling that day, and it was, of course, that's when it decides to start raining as well. So when you're feeling miserable and feeling vulnerable, it then starts raining just to add to the misery. But unfortunately, later on that day, I climbed up into the Blue Ridge Parkway, into the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it was stunning. It was amazing. So there's this big climb called Vesuvius. It's probably 15% for about 3 miles. So you can't really ride it at that point of the race. You have to push your bike. You then end up in this sort of scenery here. So you're on this amazing sort of scenery up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's amazing looking across the plains of Virginia and stuff, and it was just a really lovely. It lifted my mood massively, which is great. So you have to sort of. It's hard to process these things when you're on the bike. You're still trying to get ahead and trying to ride. So if you can be distracted by the scenery or something around you, it really helps. And then on the last day, this is when I started going. Started hitting some more trail angels and people. So this is a guy in Virginia. He's been doing this for years. And you see the JR there for me. He's got a whole wall at home filled with like people's initials. He gets them to sign. And he's got a whole wall of them at home of all the people he's come out to speak to. So he does an interview, which I'll see if I can play later as well. Gives you a PB&J sandwich, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which I think is the first time I ever had one, or at least consciously had one. So that's pretty cool. It gives you cold drinks and stuff, and they just want to be involved, you know. And you can't really say no, and you can't say, "Oh, I need to get on." So they film this interview and stuff, and all that sort of stuff. And this is him on the left, and another lady came out to say hi. That's my bike, and then again towards the end, just before there's another big, there's a lovely bike trail before the end, and these guys came out to say hi. So I think there was about 100 Lindas at the finish. Wasn't there? How many? About 4. And there's a Linda on the right, and there's a couple of guys. So they give you a drink and have a chat, and they just want a bit of your time. Be like, I want to finish. And then before you know, they're only there half an hour later, going, yeah, okay, I must go now. It's lovely to meet you. Whoops. So that was it. Coming into Virginia and into Yorktown. Then this is a video of. This is a video of me coming into the finish. Don't know if I can get any sound of it. So that's the monument in Yorktown. There we are coming into the finish. I think Ed filmed this. There's Linda at the finish. So first person I saw. So you can have an idea of like how well lit I am and stuff, and how reflective it is. So there's me at the finish. I don't know why I'm not getting any sound on this, I'm afraid, but there we are. There's a dog there.
Hello.
Yeah, so she was the first person I saw at the finish, and it always takes me a while to work out how to speak again after I finish cycling. But she came out with some flowers, which is lovely, which is a very Dutch thing. So finish lines on every sort of Dutch race, people come out with flowers. So there we are with the flowers, and congratulations. So we have all these people at the finish. I mean, loads of people. So the people staying in the local B&B that Linda was in. It's be about 11ish, was it? 10:30? 11? Just after 11. So there we are. That's me coming to the finish. There's a picture of us with the flowers. There's no picture of that up in the pub. I think 2 people have given me that picture so far, and I think Linda wanted to give it to me as well. So that's obviously the picture of the race. There's me with my little sign, sounding finished, looking a little bit tired, I suppose. I'm a bit thinner. I was at the start. And then, so the first thing I wanted to do was take my shoes off and put these Crocs on, because my shoes are pretty much, there was no given, that there was nothing left in the bottom of the soles. So it was just, I was like riding on concrete most of the time. So my feet were pretty sore. There's another picture of me just going along. It's one of the guys took a photo of me. So it's basically my kit. I wear a lot of merino on these things because it sort of stays cool when it's hot. It's sort of warm when it's cold and stuff. So it's a pretty good material to have. And it doesn't smell as much as some other materials. Apparently. So I don't know. And that's one of the amazing photos that Linda took, actually going across one of the bridges towards the end. It just stopped raining. This rainbow is just in the perfect place as I was going across. And then here's some numbers for the statos out there. So this is stripping out day 13, which is the day I told you about, where I only did about 18 kilometers or whatever, 28 kilometers, so which wasn't really a proper day. So the days, the finish line was about 22 days, but stripping that out was 21 days. That gives you an idea of how far it was. So just under 6,200 kilometers, just under 300 kilometers a day riding, about the elevation gain. So I was riding, moving time per day. So I was riding, a lot of people ask me this, how much are you riding each day? So the plan was to ride about as much as I could within a 16-hour window as possible. And I managed 12, which is not brilliant, but it's, still a lot of riding each day. My average speed for the whole race, which was 24.41. How much power I was putting out, 183 watts average power. And then I was burning 8,500 calories a day on average, which gives you an idea of how much you have to try and eat to keep going. So that's, yeah. So, and there's a sort of idea of all the different days I did and the elevation gains. I think that's the last slide. So that's it. There you go. So, any questions? I suppose if anyone wants to ask any questions, or go ahead. Anyone? Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Yeah, so I've been doing this. So it sort of comes out of Linda and I did a trip to Patagonia back in 2016, 17, 18, sorry. And when I got back from that, I decided to get into Audax, which all these guys over here do Audax. And yeah, put your hands up. Yep. So it's long distance cycling. So I started cycling. I think the first time I ever did 100 miles a day was as a part of an Audax back in 2018. And I was aiming towards Paris 2019. So if you build up this sort of ability to ride these long distances over time, and I did my first race in 2019 across the Pyrenees, and I suppose I just found that I was quite good at doing long events. I'm not particularly quick, I'm not particularly efficient, but I can seem to keep going day after day after day, which is what you have to be able to do for these long events. So, running 300 kilometers a day is pretty hard, but to do it, obviously, 22 days in a row, takes quite a lot out of you. And I think I have the resilience to be able to do it somehow. And it's not something obviously I had to build that up over years of doing it. So I do, everyone says, you don't train for these events, you just go and do them. But I do actually train. I do have a coach. I did have a pretty big year last year of training, and this year the training gone pretty well. So yeah, it's not as though I don't train for these things. I know I have an issue with eating too much, so I always look a bit fat. But actually, in terms of my power, my engine, it's pretty good for this kind of event. So yeah, that's how I did. And the difference, the interesting thing about this one is a lot of the previous events that I've done, there's been a lot about proving something to myself or to other people. It's about wanting to be. I was very angry about a lot of stuff. I was pretty angry with myself on the bike often, and to get up some hills, I sort of shout at myself, keep going, and call myself an asshole and stuff. And it's quite interesting on this race, because I was in a better place mentally. I was able to enjoy it probably in a better way. It was a much more enjoyable experience. I wasn't having a go at myself so much. It was more a celebration of what I could do rather than a sense I had to prove something. So it was much more fulfilling in that way, I think.
Just a sort of light stop.
Right, so the clicking, yeah. So after the race, I took it to this. I was so pissed off with it. I asked Linda to bring out. So I had bought a new bottom bracket for the bike, which I was going to fit before the race, which I never got around to doing. So Linda brought out this bottom bracket. So I could be great. That's going to be it. Sorted. Clicking still happened after fitting this new bottom bracket. And brand new bottom bracket. Everything was new crankset, everything else. Still clicking. It's like, and it was driving me in the bike shop. I took it up to a bike shop in Richmond. It was clicking away. And eventually, I think at the last minute, 10 minutes before they shut the shop, they said, should we just try a different rear wheel on it? So he put his rear wheel on my bike, stopped immediately. It was the free hub was dried out a bit, and one of the pores was just sticking a bit, and that's what's causing all the clicking. And eventually got it sorted in New York. There was nothing to do with the bottom bracket at all. So even though I had this disaster in the bottom bracket, the clicking was completely separate from that. So yeah, a bit odd, really, but there we are. We got to the bottom at the end, I think. So so yeah, it was yeah, God.
You have to be mentally strong there.
Yeah, you have to mentally strong. Yeah, I think so. I think again that comes with experience. I think the more you do it, the more you get used to things, and also accepting when things aren't going as well. So it's very easy to lose faith and lose focus when you're not going, when things aren't working so well. So the days I talked about, day 2, day 5, Nebraska, having to find the will to carry on, and then also accept that maybe I can't do as much today as I could yesterday, and then maybe if I have a good night's sleep and have something to eat, I might be better the next day. So it's really, it's accepting the bad days as well as the good days. Yeah. So it's and within those days as well, you have bad moments. Where it feels really tough, and suddenly you might stop for a bit longer than you need to rehydrate better, or something changes and you're back on the bike and it feels good again. So it's that yeah, accepting that things aren't going to stay the same. Things are always going to change. So you may be feeling rubbish now, but it might get better. It might feel brilliant now, but it might get worse. So it's just understanding that does vary quite a lot. And you can it's not going to stay the same forever. Yeah.
How many people finished?
How many people finished? I think maybe maybe about 20, maybe. So I was the first to finish in Yorktown. I think before I got to Yorktown, about 7 people finished in DC. I think if I hadn't had my mechanicals, I'd probably been about the 5th person to finish potentially. But obviously I went a bit further than the other guys. So probably about 20. So in Yorktown, I think 3 people finished in Yorktown. And probably about so maybe more like 50 people finished. I haven't actually listed it, to be fair. So because it didn't really feel like a race against other people, it just felt like something I wanted to do. I wanted to try and do it in 20 days. Didn't quite manage that. It was 22 days in the end. But yeah, but the guys in Virginia, Yorktown, like, you're the first. And I was like, oh wow, I've sort of maybe, yeah, it was they're more excited about it than I was, I think. It's very nice thing. Yeah.
Where next?
Where next? So the next one, I have entered one. This is one called the Peninsula Divide in Malaysia.
Oh, really?
So I'm going to see my dad lives in Singapore, so I'm going to go and spend a week with him climatizing, and then riding across the Malaysian Peninsula. It's about 1,500 kilometers in October. As Dad pointed out, the Japanese managed to do it quicker in 1942, so in the opposite direction. So that could be quite interesting. But it's part of the reason why I want to do that one is one, it's sort of I can go and see Dad at the same time, but also the racing has helped me reconnect with my father, having not seen him before or not heard from him for 10, 15 years. I think after my first race across the Pyrenees, I think Mum and Dad are in contact, and Mum told him about the race, and Dad went, oh, that's quite impressive. And Mum said, well, why didn't you tell him yourself? So we got into contact after that. And so in a way, it's nice to then be able to go and do a race near where he is. He's already massively excited. He's already booked the hotel for the start. He said he's going to get the train through Malaysia, and he wants to hire a car so he could follow me. He's too old. They won't hire him a car in Malaysia. But yeah, no, so it's really lovely that he wants to be part of that. And I think it still feels like a sort of combination of a lot of things I've done to actually share that with him in a way. So because it was how we reconnected in a way. Yeah.
How do you decompress after going through something?
Yeah, so that's good. That's a good one. Yeah, I have struggled in the past. It's mentally it can be. Yeah, no, it's I do decompress. Yeah, so yeah, it's really hard after big events, especially long ones. For me, because you have to put so much mental focus into these things. You have to be really on your game the whole time. You can't really have a weak moment, as it were. So it does take a lot of energy out of you, mental energy. And I have made the mistake of finishing the race and then doing nothing and coming back home and going to work and then suddenly feeling like my world is, disintegrating around me. So I've worked out that I need a bit of breathing space between finishing a race and coming back home. So I ended up doing a 2,000 kilometer sort of tour through New England afterwards. So yeah, well, 1,500, 2,000 kilometer tour. So I think the whole time I was in America, I actually toured to the start. So I think I managed about 8,000 kilometers or 8,500 kilometers whilst I was there. So I just ended up going off and doing, easier days, 100 to 150 kilometers a day, and just touring and trying to sort of find some normality again. It's still not easy coming home. I think the first week I found hard, and the third week I found hard, but I haven't had the same drop in mental, I think maybe because I'm in a better place mentally anyway, but I feel like I've fallen off a cliff in quite the same way I have on other events. So it is pretty, really hard to decompress. I think it's really stressful. When I first got out to Vancouver, I flew to Vancouver and I felt really stressed before I got on my bike to do the tour, because making any kind of transition from a normal life to then a very, very different life, extremely different life. So my life at home is quite extreme with the pub, and then riding my bike is quite extreme. So it's transitioning from one to the other is quite stressful and back again. So I have these sort of buffer zones now between the start and the finish and after the finish to help me sort of slowly decompress into a proper life again. As I joked with the Americans I was saying, I got to be socialized again. So when I come home, I'm not a complete arsehole. Yeah. So yeah, it's part of that going on. But yeah, it was nice. So I had a lovely tour of New England. Bobby's here. He looked after me in Shelter Island on Long Island in some fancy hotel. Just gave me lunch, which is amazing. And just being able to sort of chat with people and not be worried about how fast I was going or where I was going or how long I'd be on the bike. It's just, it helps you take away that sort of intensity from doing it to a slightly more normal sense of just riding your bike and enjoying it. Yeah. Anyone else?
Have been any women taking part?
Yeah, there were. Yeah, there was. I was having a bit of a ding dong sort of contest with a woman. I never actually saw her on the road, actually, funny enough, but we were very close to each other a lot of the way. And then we went different ways. So I think there were 3 women who started. So the lead woman, the top woman, came 4th, I think, overall, to DC. So she was pretty strong. There were three women who knew each other from Chicago. So there's a huge, representation. They're trying to improve the representation from the sort of Flinter group, they call it, which is female and not non. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah. So it's still there's still a lot of work to be done to try and include more women in sport. But actually, the women are doing really, really well. So Lel Wilcox, who you may have heard of, she was the one who was going for the overall record around the world this year. She won that event a few years ago. So she the overall event, so beat everyone. And there was also those other women for one events as well. They haven't quite come on as much as the men have recently, but it was certainly a point around 2016 to 2019 where women were competing on the same level as men. But I think because the sport has moved on and changed a little bit, and they were getting some ex-professionals coming in, and people who didn't quite make it as professional cyclists coming in, it's totally changed the front end of the races for sure. So I think women are finding it harder to compete at the front end. Yeah, there are women doing it. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? That's it. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you for coming. I'm glad you can see. I'll see if I can. I see if I can find. You see if I can find
Very well done, young.
Thank you. I'll see if I can find. See if I can find a. Just going to see if I can find a video of me being interviewed by someone. So I'm just going to.